Hey everyone, welcome to, oh my gosh, it's May. May's Empower Hour, where we are talking about seasonal hiring. I know that hiring is such a sticky topic. You want to keep good people, you want to figure out how to find good people and keep them, while also managing your costs, managing labor, managing training, all of these things. And so we have Alex and Tammy here to share their perspective and their experience and insights on hiring for the seasons. Feel free, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I will be dropping a couple of things in the chat for you to respond to if you have the ability to. And you can either drop questions in the chat or come off mute. Do the raise hand thing if you know how to do that. That's perfectly fine. We want this conversation to be a dialogue, as much as it can be, while also making space for everyone to share their insights. So welcome, welcome, Alex and Tammy. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself, the farm that you're representing, and tell us a little bit about what a season looks like for you?
So yeah, I am the dairy education coordinator at the NC State Dairy Farm on Lake Wheeler Road in Raleigh. And there's two entities that I oversee as a part of the dairy enterprise system, and that is the Howling Cow Dairy Education Center and Creamery. As you can see, we like long titles in everything that we have. We just call it the Creamery for short, and that's our retail location for the Howling Cow ice cream. And that's the largest number group of employees that I have. And then I also have the Randley Dairy Heritage Museum that I oversee. Smaller group of students, but that is the tours of the dairy farm, and any of the programming that we do, camps, day camps, and different things from an educational standpoint. So my seasons really are the semester. Like right now, we are in the transition. We just had commencement last weekend. So lots of students have left for the summer or are going on to internships or study abroad. So we always have a mass exodus of student workers from the spring semester, and starting into the summer semester, which is what we're into right now. I believe we've had almost 10 or 11 new hires start just this week alone, and I've got about 30 student employees working at the creamery right now, and I only have four student employees working uh, at the museum. So that's kind of a little overview. My seasons really fall on the semesters. We'll do the same thing that we're doing right now in August when we start into classes.
Mhm.
The summer kids will be heading back to classes, or they don't want to work during the semester, and we'll have a new group of students coming in at that time. So that's kind of how I fall into the seasonal side of things.
So thank you. Tammy, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Tammy Peterson. My husband and I own Hubb's Farm in Sampson County in the eastern part of the state. We've been operating the agritourism side of the farm for 18 years. Our busiest season is during the fall, and we hire 50 to 75 employees during that time. And we'll work on a given day, we'll work 35 to 40 on a given Saturday or Sunday. Um, the fall, I mean, our fall goes from the end of September through the 1st of November. And it is a crunch time. It's about like tax season if you're an accountant, or tobacco burning season if you're a farmer. So that is the size that we hire for.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Let's start with the top of our list of questions. What are some of the methods you found to be the most effective for recruiting seasonal staff? And either one of you can take that.
Either one. Well, I'll go ahead and say that, just advertising on Facebook seems to be the best that we have. We don't put ads in the newspaper. I communicate with the schools. I have at times handed out business cards to people at fast food restaurants that maybe were really friendly. And we're at the grocery store talking to folks. But really, Facebook, on our farm page, and then also on my personal page, and getting people to share it. The schools, I'm really getting more and more high school students over the last few years, so that word of mouth is pretty good too. I try to make it our farm somewhere that a parent would want their child to work, maybe their first job.
Mhm.
We do the same thing with our social media. The majority of our students are coming from the college. We do have some Wake Tech students that will come and they'll hire on as a temporary employee. And the one other thing that we use, and I don't know if this would calculate into really be relevant for other members, but NC State has a temp employment service, university temporary services that we can utilize. And I don't know if there's anything out there which would help farmers with temporary placement for seasonal help or not. But that's something I know. Again, I have access to that at NC State, and I don't know if that would be a help for members to go in and find if they were really looking for those seasonal helpers. But definitely, definitely, social media is the big push. We again on campus, we're trying to communicate with the different clubs that we have on campus. So that's again really specific to NC State, but trying to think about how a member could utilize some of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I know I have just a little bit of experience with your county, or maybe it's a couple of counties, your workforce development office. There are some there that organization will help with some of the cost share. From what I know, it's more of a long term, not a seasonal or temp hire, but they do help offset some of like the salary costs or training costs for new hires, so that's always an option as well.
We really stress the fact that we're seasonal, so close to the Christmas season. So we had a
Mhm,
lot of school teachers and just folks looking for a little bit of extra money for
mhm,
that, yeah, Christmas.
mhm, mhm. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because you said that your season is primarily fall. How early do you start the hiring process, and what are some of the factors that influence that timeline that you have?
I'll send out to our former staff.
Mm,
I try to sometimes be selective of who I send it to, but it never fails that it always gets around and they're all calling, especially if they want to come back to work. But I'll
mhm,
send out a message to them early June or something and just
mhm,
basically say, are y'all planning to, are you planning to work again this year? Would you like to work again this year? And try to get a number from that. It always, starting so soon, especially, you sort of got to go through the process of working at the farm and working the season, because especially if somebody's never worked, if you get them in here, if you do the interviewing process so soon, they're chomping at the bit to try to figure out when are you going to work them and how many hours are they going to get. And
mhm,
that's sort of a gradual process because the first weekend is slow. And so moving in, I've I have started probably late July and go through August with applications. And then I'll do a meeting closer to our season opening with all of them, all the staff. And then I'll, make phone calls or the ones that are gonna help. I've been fortunate over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to make phone calls and say, I don't, unfortunately this year we got all we had. In the past, I've just taken whoever was almost a breathing body, to come in, but I've been fortunate to be more selective with that, have more
Mhm.
applicants than I really needed. And so I'll start middle July, go through August, and then I'll do a full staff meeting it's probably the second week in September, and try to get everybody. And then when we start, I'll bring some of the new ones in a couple of hours on a Saturday and Sunday, the first couple of weekends. And then
Mhm.
it sort of falls out to who you can depend on and who you can't.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. What
we
about
usually
you?
start we usually start about a month out, a month to 6 weeks out from, and so for us right now, we've been advertising since the really the beginning, end of March, beginning of April, for this change, and we'll go into the summer. What we do with our existing, being we are open year round, we with our existing staff, we're going to send that Google Doc out probably in at the end of June. We're going to send a Google Doc to all of our current staff and say, is your intention to stay here in the fall semester?
Mhm.
If you are, do you know how many hours that you'd like to work? Do you know? So we're going to ask some different questions along those lines with that Google Doc. So we're going to kind of get that information in. The creamery manager is going to bring all that information, plug it into a spreadsheet for each person staying or not staying. So we kind of get an idea of what we're going to need moving forward. Um, so that's what we're doing. The other thing is the biggest thing for us when it comes to hiring is we really give everybody a chance. If they come in and sit down and present themselves in a somewhat of a professional manner, then they're probably going to walk away with a job. And what we do is we do a 30-day review with them. So I know Tammy's a little different with seasonal hiring. So we definitely, and we explain it. Hey, we're gonna do a 30-day review, and if this isn't a good fit for you, you can let us know. And if it's not a good fit for us, we're gonna let you know, but we'll give you some feedback anyway. So that's one of the tactics that we'll use. But for the most part, yeah, we're taking everybody. We just got to a point this year right now where we have a lineup of about 7 or 8 uh, applications that we can't fill because we're full. So
Ah,
we've and
whitelist.
and that's something that we've strived for a long time, and I think we're creating a good culture. Words getting around that hey, this is a good place to work. So that's what I really want to create.
I feel like the same thing here. And we're being involved in communicating with the different groups or boards that I'm on, and the different, even the professional people in our area, knowing that we hire and what our expectations are of the teens. It's sort of like they say a good word for us when folks are talking about trying to get their child a job, or even if they're wanting part-time work and they're an adult.
Yeah. You spoke to this a little bit, and I feel like it can kind of seem like a no-brainer, but I want to ask anyway, what are some of the qualities that you're prioritizing when evaluating candidates for seasonal roles?
Got to smile. They've just got to have a personality of some sort.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is the biggest thing to me. And I'm not saying they all do or they don't. A lot of them are shy. They don't want to make a mistake, and they don't really know, and they're real timid acting. And they just got to get out of that. And
Okay.
you got to smile. Your customer service. Here we're people are paying to come in the door. They're paying us to help them make memories.
Mhm.
And we started the farm when our child was born. Luke was born in February. We started the farm in September. I quickly learned I was a 42 and I had Luke, so I sort of was an older parent, but I learned the quickest way to an adult's heart is to make their child smile and
Mhm.
interact with them. You've
Mhm.
got to interact with people. And that is a hard thing to do. And I really push that.
Mhm.
We do background checks on all our employees. Um, 18 years or under 18 really don't get anything. But any adults, 18 and older, we do background checks on them every year, even if they're returning. Um, and so and we don't put up with, try not to put up with just slacking off. We won't, somebody that's sort of a leader. Um, and we give them a chance too. And I mean, we encourage them, and we've got a lot of older um, adults that help us, and I've really wanted them to be like mentors to these younger kids. I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of the ones that are laugh and carry on.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think for us, we're looking for somebody who clearly communicates, can make eye contact, can, answer some real basic interview questions, which that's kind of what we do. But again, like I said, we're kind of giving everybody a chance. For the most part, we get really good kids. I know we'll talk about training and little other things down the line, and I think that makes a huge difference when it comes to um, the employees that are going to make something of themselves and do a good job for you.
Mhm.
Getting really really good training involved, and I can go into more detail on how we do that later on.
Mhm.
But also just clearly defining expectations. I think that's one of the biggest things that people really you have got to, if you can't just bring somebody in and throw them behind a counter and say, okay, go ahead, scoop this ice cream.
Mhm.
um, we really take to heart that. And honestly, from my standpoint, my phone doesn't ring because my people know what they're doing, and that's what I really want. That's what I strive for, is to empower the leaders that you put in place, and make sure that, that they know what to do. And if they need to call you, they're not afraid to call you.
Right.
But for the most part, yeah, just that defining expectations is a huge piece. And I know that's not like what you're looking for, but I think if you do that and you clearly define what the expectation is, here's an expectation: show up on time. That's one of
Mhm.
my biggest things. Like this is not hard, folks. Get
Mhm.
here on time. If you're not going to get here on time, you better let somebody know. And we clearly state it right in our book. If you're late more than 3 times, this isn't going to work. So those are some of the things that's more on the expectation side, not questions that we're asking. But
Right. Well, but those are like the litmus tests, right? If you have not defined the expectations that you have for people coming into your business, how do you choose someone? You let all any kind of riffraff in, and then be retroactive and saying, "Oh, wait, but don't do that. Oh, I know I didn't outline that ever in the beginning, but now it becomes a thing." So I appreciate you saying that, because it's definitely necessary to identify what is important to you and your farm so that you can choose the best people to put in place.
The two we get the most compliments for about our staff.
Hmm.
And it's sort of like your child. Sometimes they don't act around you, around
Right.
others like they do around you. So,
Um,
sometimes I feel like that's the case. But
mhm.
when I'm talking with them, I'm a very straightforward person, and I don't cut them any slack at the beginning of the when they get hired on. I want them to be a little bit scared of it. I mean, I want them to be a little bit fearful that if Tammy comes around and you're just like a knot on a log, she's not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I mean,
A
you
little
know,
healthy
not
respect.
do what now?
A little healthy respect.
A little, you
Yeah.
know, just I'm not tolerating it. And
Mhm.
I'll call them out. I will call them out. And I try not to call them out in, you know, in front, but I'll call them out and I'm pretty consistent across the board.
Mhm, mhm. Awesome. Well, speaking of that, what are some of the hiring challenges that you may have had in the past, and how did you really address those?
I will say the leadership and by leadership for me it's my creamery manager is the person who's everything yeah, I'm the boss, but she's the one who operationally does everything. And I've had um I've had some bad attitudes in that position, people with poor attitudes that make people feel uncomfortable and they walk on eggshells around them. And that's one of the worst
Uh,
things to have to deal with
Mhm,
is student employees, younger workers, and some of these students are it's their first job really. They've done all these extracurriculars in high school and now they come to college and they're getting a job. And it's not a matter like I agree with what Tammy said. Like you have these expectations for them, but when you have the kind of that wrong personality in that leadership position, that's just it's an uphill battle trying to get people. And right now, like I was saying before, I have a line of people who want to come work for me, for us, and it's because we've made some of those changes where uh, we care about our people and we make sure that that comes across. So from the challenge standpoint, now I think it's going to be making sure we're keeping the the good customer service, kids and students that really want to do the work, but also um, letting the ones go that don't need to be there. And that doesn't happen very often with us, but it does happen.
yeah, it is never a good work environment when we allow someone to just not pull their weight.
right.
And I mean, on our season is 7 or 8 weeks. You know, I really don't have time to just. And I mean, I need you don't need to be carrying that extra cost
Mhm,
either. So I tell them when we start, I tell them, you know, you're not. I don't normally fire people. I just don't put you back on the schedule.
mhm,
You know, I got 7 weeks. We're seasonal. I just won't put you back on the schedule.
mhm,
And then if you are not getting the work you would like, you might want to call and ask me. And I mean, I've been, you know, frankly, you're just not a very pleasant person. I've had those conversations. I mean, it's sort of, Alex, you laugh, but I mean, it's sort of like one of those things.
Yep.
I
yeah,
don't have time to mess with you. You know,
yeah.
Well,
you need,
especially in that short
yeah,
of a
you need
season,
to.
yeah, you don't have the
Mhm. You
yep.
don't
And
have the bandwidth for it.
so but we've had a great group, and we are continuing to get like I said, really the cream of the crop, I think, of high school students. And so that's working out good. And you know, I stress to parents, you know, and there's no better teacher for for a teenager than probably my husband John. He
Mhm,
cares he cares about them understanding what and why they're doing something. He really takes the time to help them learn something when they're doing it. And I do too. So I try to get him as good eggs as I can get him. He takes the time with him and I just put him there. And I
Hey, Teamwork makes the dream work. I love
Yeah,
it.
but to the parents, I just, where are they going? And I have the parents come out, anybody under 18, their parents
Mhm.
come with them. And I tried to hire 14-year-olds last year. I'll do 15, and that's been okay. Speaking of my Alex, you carry it. Let me see what my son needs. He's
All
got.
right, all right. I just to touch base on the chat that goes in that Abriana put in. Yeah,
Mhm.
finding applicants. I seriously think that at least was for a long time, that was a really, really hard part for us.
Yeah.
The interviewing process and the vetting process, yeah, there's only been a few that we've just not hired on that initial interview. Onboarding and training, I'd love to talk more about that. That's if and when you kind of give me the go ahead, I want to
Yeah,
touch
it's
base
coming
on
up.
that. And then yeah, managing performance, that 30-day review. That's I like doing that. It's something for a point in time we got away from it, but
Mhm.
bringing those people in and we basically say, hey guys, here's the questions we're going to ask. If you want to, we actually send it to them and say, here's what we want to talk about. Why don't you bring us something too? Because what is it that you and the highest praise I ever got from an employee, and this is a couple of years ago, we brought her in for this 30-day, and I said, what do you like? What do you don't? What do you not like? And she said, there's always something to do, and you've clearly defined the expectations, and that's why I brought that up earlier, is because this one employee just said, oh, I know what you expect of me,
Yeah.
so I can do the job because I know what's expected. So
Right. Right.
Was
Awesome.
there a new question? I apologize.
Well, I'm about to ask this. John
Okay.
asked this question, and we'll talk a little bit about the responses in a second, but this is a good question. Do you use any volunteers over the season? And is the training for them any different? How do you manage them, reward them? Is there an age range that's best for that? Do either of you all work with
I do
volunteers?
not. No, I don't.
That's always an amazing question to me.
Mhm.
And sometimes people come up and they assume that the people out there on the farm are volunteers.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure why they would assume that, because we are a for-profit farm, and I
Mhm.
don't expect anybody to work
Mhm.
out here as a volunteer.
Mhm.
Now, one thing I tried to is I was getting to my 14-year-olds. I want to really get my 14. I wanted to start with 14-year-olds, and maybe they'd be really good, and I'd have them about 3 years, because I envisioned them doing a dance out there when the song came on. They would know, every year they'd get bolder and cheerful, working. But they're just not very mature. So, but I really would love to. So one thing that I did say to them this year, and a couple of them wanted to take me up on it, but I really didn't have the time to implement it. The 14-year-olds that I thought were potentials, I told them if they wanted to come out to the farm one day, the first couple of weekends, I would give them a free pass to the farm, and I would like for them to work shadow with
Mhm.
another person. And then we would, if they seemed to, I would then get advised by this staff member I put them with. That would be the closest I've ever come to really not paying anybody that's out there that works out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mentorship program or something to that effect
Mhm.
um, is always, yep.
Yeah. Um, John, you can offer a little bit more insight. I'm curious to know if the question about volunteers comes with like trying to manage labor costs, or what that looks like for you. Um, One of the ways that makes it a little bit more digestible is like calling something an internship or an externship. Because I did a lot of work for NC State for free, but it was an internship. So, that might be a way to have very clearly defined roles, still have a training process, but that person is coming either with a stipend or, not necessarily an hourly rate. If that was why you're asking that question. But thank you so much for dropping that in the chat. We're at the halfway mark. Let's talk about all right, they're hired. What is the next step? How are you managing and motivating them throughout the season when I know that you all have your peaks and it can get overwhelming at times?
Really, I mean, Alex, probably not like yours on a hot summer day when people are waiting out the door. But when we're really busy, it's hard. I have, I mean, people wonder, do I ever eat or stop around here? Because I don't stop and take a lunch. I don't. And I have to, Beth, that helps me, is really good at sort of helping me realize that people need breaks. So, so I have really made it, man, and I went for a few years that I didn't require my teams and all to take the break they're supposed to take. And so now, I try to staff up during a period of time to allow people to, for them to take a break. I've created a sort of a break area with a refrigerator and stuff that they can put their food in. I've got an outside tent that I set up for their break area. We give them free passes for their families, and then we give them some day passes to give out. I also this year, one thing that I have a time with is the concessions and them running in and grabbing a slushie, or them running in and, just, or thinking they can just grab a drink out of the cooler. And I've really tried to bring that in some, because when you got 35 or 40 people, you can't, you just can't. And so one thing I did, we used Square, so I gave them all a gift card. I gave them all a card. I had it and they would pay. I doubled. If they gave me $20, I put $40 on their card. So if they went to the concessions and they bought something at concessions, they were ringing it up full price, but they were paying with the card that I had doubled the money. So they were getting everything at 50% off. And so then that worked pretty good. And I created it. It's probably upside down. It was the staff concession card. And then I found out my son was going in there and getting slushies for all his friends. So, that so I mean, things like that. The ones that realized they appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
And it only worked at our concessions. I've got a vendor that's on site. It didn't work there, but we do a year end or a season end party at the end of the season. I really try to compliment. I really try to go by and compliment the staff. And
I think for us it starts out with a 2-day training, and then we actually have one of our shift leaders with our new team members. They're gonna do all of day one. There's day one and day two training. So day one takes up a couple hours, and then they're just gonna scoop ice cream, but they're actually being shadowed by one of our shift leaders or shift managers. So they're right there with that person step by step, and they're going to go through every single order that they're making for the rest of their first shift. That's just going to be reinforcing what they learned in that first training. Then on day two training, we train them on the cash register, our point of sale system. We go through mock orders and all sorts of different things. And then if it's not too busy, again, that shift leader is going to be right over the shoulder of the new team member, and they're going to take real orders and do that. And once they do that for a couple hours, really they've got it pretty well down. So that's one of the things to me, absolute number one is training. They've got to
Yeah.
have good, adequate training coming right out of the gate. Um, I was onboarded, a company that I worked for. I was onboarded one time. I walked through the door. They had my business card. They had a computer. They had a phone. They handed me keys to a truck, and then they started in training me. So all that stuff was onboarded, was right there, ready to go. And that's kind of how I approached onboarding for these kids. The second thing is, like Tammy said, we do pizza gets-togethers. I took my Blackstone grill and threw it on the back of my truck and took it in and grilled burgers for them at the end of the semester 2 weeks ago. Just anything that we can do that just breaks it up. Another big part, and I know from a seasonal standpoint, this really probably doesn't work for other farmers, but we being that we get so busy, we really only run a 4-hour shift for our employees. Saturdays and Sundays we're open from 12 to 7, and it is nonstop. Customers coming through the door. There is zero downtime. We're scooping constantly for every minute of those 7 hours and beyond. So we run a 4-hour shift, and it saves burnout.
Mhm.
If I ran, I would have students quitting left and right if I made them work open to close every single Saturday and Sunday. They just wouldn't last. They don't want to do it. And I don't blame them, because I really don't either.
Yeah.
Um, so those are a handful of things from a retention standpoint. We do give, again, I'm year round, so all of my students who started here this May, if they stay into to the January semester, so if they're basically working 6 months, I give them a 50-cent raise. And then if they stay through next summer, they're going to get another 50-cent raise in May. So it's about 2 raises a year. And I also do that for students who left for the summer. I have one student who lives in upstate New York, and she goes home. So she's home in New York right now, and she's going to come back in the fall. Well, she'll get a 50-cent raise in the fall. So
Mhm.
that's what we're doing, just as a little bonus. We can't do tips at the state.
Yeah.
Uh, if I did do tips, I probably wouldn't have any problem with retention, because our kids would be making $20 and $25 an hour on the weekends. So I wouldn't
Mhm.
have problems staffing the weekend shifts.
Yeah. Tammy, I know you talked a little bit about, making sure that your teams are taking breaks and stuff. How long are the shifts that you have?
It really depends. It really depends.
Mhm.
I've got some, some of my older folks, they're like, Tammy, I want to work every hour you're open. And and that's fine. If they're smiling when they leave, just like they were smiling when they got there, that's fine. I
Mhm.
don't like for my team, and I've got some teams, especially there's some of them that really want to get as much money as they can that weekend. If they work every hour that weekend, they might work 20 hours. I mean,
Mhm.
I think the Saturday and Sunday. But I try to do 5 hours. I try to make it worth it's seasonal, so there's not many weeks to get it. But I don't expect somebody to drive in and then work a couple of hours and turn around, send them home. They're gonna work at least 4 or 5 hours.
Mhm.
And they're going to get their breaks they are supposed to get, the 30-minute lunch. This year, whether they take the break or not. Now I've told them to clock out and clock back in. And some of them, they want to just keep on, especially if their job's not the hardest, and especially if they're in a position that's not, they don't want to take the break. But this year, whether they clock out and take a break or not, they're going to get 15 minutes. They're going to get a break taken out of their check
Mhm.
because they're required to take a break.
Mhm.
And I tell them to take a break. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'll add to that, even on our 4-hour shifts, our shorter shifts that we run, we do give them 10 to 15 minutes, and we schedule that in. Partway through the shift, everybody's going to get a few minutes. Go check your phone, get a drink,
they
go
clock
to the
out.
bathroom. Just they don't clock out. No.
They don't clock out.
That we don't make them.
Well, they're not making, maybe they're not because they're only 4-hour shifts.
Because it's a 4-hour shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
If they work so many hours, you're required to give them a,
30-minute. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. Anybody
whatever
working
it
6 hours, 6 hours is our, so that 6 hour mark, they get 30 minutes.
Yeah. Beverly shared that she's heard from others that they
is.
incentivize their staff during seasons with bonuses based on attendance and performance. Is
I
that
do,
something that you all do?
I do that at the end of the year. At the end of the year, based on the number of seasons they helped us, times the number of hours they worked, that they get up, it's a calculation, and it can be up to $100
Mm-hmm.
that they can make. Yeah, every year that they've consistently worked with us is probably 10 more cents. So they could add really 50 cents to their time based on that calculation. And then we have done additional bonuses for some of our lead staff.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't do anything along those lines because it's the state. It's
Yeah.
the university. They just, yeah.
A lot more
I wish I could, because that would definitely be something that I would do. Um,
yeah. But they got burgers.
they did get
That's
burgers.
good. I'm sure they appreciated that. Um, I wanted to just kind of go back to something we hit on a little bit earlier. We were talking about the expectations of your business and how you ensure your new staff kind of understand the culture that you're trying to have in your business. When it comes to training, what are some of the things that you are like making sure that they understand? We have timeliness, we have smiles, is there anything else that is kind of unique to you that you are like, we got to make
You know,
sure people know
I
that?
want them, I want them to know why the farm is called Hubb's Farm.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of questions. Why is it called Hubb? See, that was my father's name, James Hubbard Butler. So that's where the hub comes in. I want them to know a little bit about the farm or about the family, because there's so many people that they're like, does the people that own, are they ever out here? And we've all got radios and everybody wears an earbud, should wear an earbud. But I want them to know if they don't know the answer to something, they know somebody that can call. I mean, the earbud can be overwhelming because everybody has one. So we have our farm manager, he's really good on the radios with, over. So, we're getting some pretty good radio etiquette going down. So everybody's just not jibber jabbering and, just plugging in. And we've got different channels for different areas, concessions, the back, and we've got four, myself and John and the farm manager, and then the sort of the admin events coordinator. We all have a radio that scans all the channels.
mhm.
So we're the only ones that's got those. So we can lock in on those channels and anybody can call to us. So that, they can get up with us. And
Yeah, those are great
Yeah,
things.
I think the communication side of things, as the Dairy Education Center, unfortunately, we get so busy, there's not a lot of time to be able to interact with our customers, but we do want our students to interact with them. Now, we hire students from not just animal science, psychology majors, textile majors, engineering students. So we have all these different students that come in, but we do want them to learn a little bit about cows. That's what we're here to talk about. We are the dairy. So, in at one point we've gotten away from it a little bit now, but at one point we allowed them to volunteer on the dairy farm to do a calf feeding shift and a milking shift, and we actually paid them to do that. They had to tell us when they were doing it, and it was a 3 or 4 hour. And I said, yeah, go ahead. You can clock in while you do that because you're learning about learning about this as a part of your job, so that you can maybe be able to have a conversation with a customer who you're serving. So that's some of the stuff that we want to get through to our employees.
Absolutely.
And I
Danette,
did put that in the answer to that question. Everybody at our farm starts out at that $12. Um, that's where we start everybody.
do you have a base rate that you start everyone at, Tammy?
My teenagers start at $9,
Mm-hmm.
and the adults, they start 12 to $15,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll have the bonus at the end of the year, or season
Mm-hmm.
rather.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about all of the things that you do to bring in the staff and make sure that they're trained up to your expectations. What are some of the things that you are doing, say, at the end of the season or the end of the semester to retain those people? Because it costs more to get new people than it does to keep the people that you already have, right? So what are some of those things that you're doing to either get them to come back next year or the next semester?
We have a spring season to also.
Oh, okay.
So we will, it's just not as big as our fall, so we'll get some of them back in the spring. And
Mhm.
normally the staff in the spring are the ones from the fall. And like
Mhm.
I said, I'll just sort of stay in touch with them. I really ought to create like and I have created it, we've just not utilized it, like a staff Facebook page, a
Mhm.
group for communications and all. And yeah, some of them would use it probably, but some of them wouldn't check. We're using the app we're using for communications, which is August. That's where I do my schedule. It's pretty good at allowing us to communicate and text to everyone. Um, but just knowing where they're at and reaching out to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's definitely communication. At the end of the semester, what are your intentions? And we have everything from, yes, I'm coming back in the fall, to no, I've got a lot of credits I'm taking next year and I'm not coming back. Or so we've just got a lot of turnover. And as badly as I want to keep especially my good students, my good workers, it's just they're going on to get their grown up jobs and live their life. So again, that's why we pour so much into our training, because we know that turnover is going to be there. It's inevitable in our business, so we're just going to lean into it and deal with it, and hopefully we retain enough good ones that can train the new staff. So
Awesome. Awesome. I did have a question about, I mean, I know that we talked more so about seasonal hiring, but what about those people that are with you year round? Those more long-term, like this is maybe more of a career than it is a transient position. Do you have any roles like that? I know Alex, you talked about your the museum person.
I've got one at the creamery. I've got one full-time state employee.
Okay.
And then I've got one full-time state employee at the museum as well. So
Mhm.
for me, the thing that I do with, and they are different, because yes, they're still young, they're still in their early 20s, but um they're in a full-time state position. So for me, a lot of my communication and the role that I take is what tools do you need to do your job?
Mhm.
um, what is it that I can provide you that's either going to either make your job better, or how can we advance our program? And that's kind of how I view both of their jobs is, this is a program that we're running. So the creamery is very much like a business. The museum is as well, because we're responsible to pay our own bills. So we do have to look at it from a business standpoint, but we also have to look at it from a programmatic standpoint and say, okay, what do you need to do this job and to make this program? What's the next step, and how do we make it better, and how are we going to improve it? So that's a regular conversation that we're having. Um, and the other thing, I try to we try to do some outings, or just get out of the office once in a while and just go have lunch. You
Mhm.
know, those are the things that I do for my full-time people. I'm not doing that for students, because they're gonna get hamburgers and pizza once in a while. So, but yeah, that's what I'm doing with my full-time people. And again, it's just the two of them for me.
We've got one guy that's full time. He's our farm manager, and we've had him a couple of years now. And I really, the growth opportunity that's here is, I try to stress that. I mean, his ideas, we try to, implement, and really, he's been here 2 years, so I think he's gone through the seasons twice. So it's pretty good learning for him. But I think he's really recognizing that it is just the potential is unlimited to what you can create out here.
Mhm.
Um, that an imagination is something that he's got a wife and two children, so he really, they're in T-ball now, so they don't, he's not gonna work much, over now, but during the fall season, he is here as much as we are. And then I've
Mhm.
got
So
another lady that is, she's retired basically, where she and her husband love to travel. She's got a daughter that lives in Alaska, and so she does our events and marketing, and this is she loves it as much as I do. So it just sort of works. It works out that
the
way.
one thing that I heard Tammy say this, and I love this, because allowing your employees to create and utilizing their ideas, I think is so important. And I remember hearing this from some leader that I was listening to, and they said, let your employees come up with this plan, and then and if it's 70 or 80%, but you can still see some holes in it, but you just let them go with it. And I had that opportunity that happened actually this year, and I could see some holes that were going to happen, and I didn't say anything, because it wasn't good, the downfall of the program. Nothing, there wasn't a safety issue, but I could see how this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And then my employee pushed even harder, because this was all hers. She created it, was her baby. And she came back to me, and we kind of picked it apart afterwards. And she said all the things that I was thinking previously. I was thinking, great. Now she's going to make it even more hers, because she's figured out the problem. She sees the little holes in there. And that's so empowering to an employee, when you can let them have that creation. And so that I think is an important part for especially when we're dealing with. And I don't know, Tammy, you sounds like your employee is pretty relatively young as well, but I love seeing that, because that just shows that growth with them too.
Yeah.
Taking them to the conferences like the ANA or the NAFMA or events conference, shit, taking them to those type things is really helpful too.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's,
You're investing in their professional development. So
yeah.
Yeah.
it definitely keeps people around. Awesome. Are there any other questions? We have 5 minutes. You can either drop them in the chat or come off mute. Any other questions for Alex or Tammy, or any other comments? Doesn't have to be a question.
I'd love to get your guys' perspective on, I know we talked about onboarding, and Alex, you mentioned how you try to give them everything up front. I've heard of a couple farms doing kind of like onboarding guides where it's like, here's your pamphlet before you start with everything that you need to know. Do you guys do like a pack that they receive? Do you just do, Tammy, you mentioned you have like a September meeting. Do you go through it all there and just have them take notes, or what does your like onboard
I
documents
do
look like?
go through it all there basically, and we have had, and we do sort of kind of have an employee manual. Every year I try to improve that or really get it in a format. You know, we could put that in the QR code, or
Mhm.
put it online and put it up the QR code. Even responsibilities at some of the activities. I'm really trying to I want our staff I want to be staffed enough to that our staff can talk to the customers. I don't want everybody to, I tell them, if anybody's gonna be running around like a chicken with their head chopped off, it needs to be me. I mean, I want them to be, so you need to be engaged. I love walking around with a bucket and a trash picker upper and just, that's what if you're not doing anything else, you're picking up trash. But you can walk around and talking to people, where'd you drive from? And that. But with that said, so I've sort of tried to eliminate some of my staffing of activities. Because especially with some of the activities, I mean, the more you staff and the more you got out there, the more you're like jump pillow. If I staff that, the parents will be gone. They won't even look at their kids. If I just have somebody in that area sort of walking around, looking at things, and talking to people, they'll notice their kids and follow those rules better and it's less hectic. I've put in some security cameras or cameras up that point to the jump pillow in different places. I mean, and I try to, so I want all my staff to be customer service people.
Awesome. Do you
Did
see
we-
that?
Where it's like we froze or something. It's like we
Oh,
were for time.
No, so yeah, I totally blanked on your question, Marissa. What was your question again?
It was about onboarding, like documents,
Onboarding.
manuals. Do
Yeah.
you have a big manual
Yeah,
that you staff when they
we
join?
basically give them at the end of their interview, we give them an employee handbook, which covers really the policies, and we do ask them to sign it and bring it back when they come, and that's just something. It just covers us that, hey, you've read through this. We have actually gone. The next thing we've done from an onboarding standpoint is after their day 1 and day 2 training, we have a short document that just does a quick review, and that's on your way out the door. Hey, here's just a quick review. Just kind of just to think about, was you took a lot of information today, and possibly they were really, we get really busy during the weekdays too. So, here's just a little refresher to go. And we just started that this spring, so I don't have any feedback on that yet. I'm thinking about it. If the 20-year-old me would say, I'm not reading this piece of paper you just handed me, but we're giving it a shot just to see if it's something that helps that. So
I want to step back to John's question. I looked at the messages there, but talking about volunteers, I mean, if we had volunteers, they would not. I have checked on having volunteers. Basically having somebody out there that was paid maybe differently than I would, and maybe not would get, they wouldn't necessarily get a payroll check, but paid in a like kind sort of thing. However, if you've got workers' comp, they're not on your payroll. I mean, if they get hurt, and I'm the queen of you better, safety liability type, I just think you don't realize how important it is. So, I mean, think about that. Carrie, you asked about the accounting. I use payroll. My payroll is done through Square. And so and then I just do a journal entry over into QuickBooks for it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, that is a very good point to be had about volunteers, and I know that's why a lot of places don't take them on, because you
Yeah,
can't
I mean, you know,
cover
they're
them the
sitting,
same way.
you know, they're sitting there and, oh, Tammy, I would never do that. I said, if you fell off the top of that slide and broke your neck, you would be
Who's gonna
looking
pay
for
for it?
somebody to pay that. And I've got workers' comp in place, but you're choosing not to be covered,
Right,
you know, so.
right. Well, that's a great way to, instead of just being like, oh, I don't want to. It's like there's actual law.
I mean, there's a
Yeah.
risk. I mean, you're putting your company at risk. And if anybody's gonna put my company at risk, I want it to be me, not them. But
Absolutely.
talking about giving your lead staff room to do things. I tell Beth, and especially Beth, I'm like, you're good at spending somebody else's money. She has ideas and ideas and ideas and ideas, and sometimes it's almost overwhelming.
Mhm.
So I think delegation is something I need to work on with my, the leads, because it can be overwhelming when they're just one idea after another idea after another idea. Like, you're not
Mhm.
going to another conference, you're staying at home.
I got too many ideas, but
Hush.
speaking of conference, and just the fact that this is really meant to be, these Empower Hours are really meant to be a value add for members of the association. I absolutely appreciate you, Tammy and Alex, for coming in and sharing your perspectives and experiences on hiring. And thank you to all of you all that attended. You asked some really, really, really good questions. And so this will be recorded. It will be sent out to the association after this. And as you are coming up with different or experiencing different things and coming up with additional questions, please feel free, if you haven't already, to join the ANA Facebook group and ask those questions. You don't have to sit just in confusion by yourself, right? We are really wanting to use these Empower Hours to bring people together, so you can just feel free to ask some of the things that are coming up for you as you enter your seasons this year. So thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of the month. We'll see you next month. I didn't even look at the date. It's the second Thursday.
It's June 12th.
June 12th. We will see you June 12th at 7 o'clock, and we're going to be talking about safety and liability at that session. So awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
You all
Thank
next
Appreciate you
time.
having me.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
you.